So I think this was really great. I'm not sure if everybody else is in the same background, but I was a part of the privileged generation too, and I can really account for like some of that energy that was a part of sort of like the Valley in the Silicon Valley in the late 90s was this really special place where there was just this constant whisper of why don't we start up that was, in the background of every conversation you had. At the time I was working for Sun Microsystems in sort of the mid-90s when Java first came out. The dot, and yeah, exactly, the dot and .com. And it was just prevalent, like we all had friends who had started up and made a lot of money, and we were all just watching the market boom. It was just incredibly just right there that if we, that this opportunity was available to us, that we knew people who had been successful. So the whole ecosystem was there. It's actually why I'm in India a little bit, is because I feel some of that here. It's not quite as dense as it was in Silicon Valley in the late 90s, but there's starting to be more like startup energy in India right now, where, I mean, it must be why you're here to some degree. It's like there's starting to be some feel and general perception, I'll say, around the world that it's possible that like the next Google comes from India. Of the opportunities coming, like India is now like at the front of the pack, like and while it's not as concentrated as the Silicon Valley was, like there's still a big push, a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, and starting to be money. Another aspect of the Valley in the 90s that's interesting to talk about is it was the first time, I think, in history where large institutional money really took a bet on youth. There was, like I did a startup, I got funded, I was like 24, 25. A lot of, the other people from the Java group who started Marimba, they were all like billionaires by this time, and they were all in their late 20s. I had some friends who went to get funding, and they wore suits, and they felt like they didn't get funded because the VCs all thought that they were like accounting reps, and they all just had this perception that like that this revolution, the internet revolution that was changing everything, that only the young understood it, like and they were willing to bet significant amounts of money on very inexperienced people, and they appreciated the culture that came with youth, and sort of like you were saying too, of like it was a very healthy relationship in that there was both an appreciation for some of the comic aspects of having very young teams where we all slept at work, we played ping pong, our VCs gave us a ping pong table, but at the same time they also treated like us like intelligent adults, in that we had board meetings where we were expected to make firm commitments on what we were going to be able to deliver and to follow up. And so that part of things was really neat. So I did one startup, it was successful, and then since then I've been a part of like a number of other startups, both in Silicon Valley and in India. And now I'm sort of looking at starting an incubator as my next startup. So my vision on an incubator, I've been thinking about this a lot. It's a little bit different than a lot of what you've been hearing, but it's worth talking through. Again, my background is all with technology, so that sort of tempers some of it. Some thoughts. Think about an incubator as a business, in that you have your raw materials, you have the teams, the people that come into your system that you decide to work with. You have your sort of like your plant, which is like working on taking these raw materials and refining them into like products. Your product are the companies that are coming out, like and be clear about this from a couple of perspectives. One is this notion that that you're trying to help make these teams as pretty and marketable as possible. And that means filling out the team, it means refining the ideas, a number of things. But even more importantly, it means you have to be clear about who you're selling them to. Like it's very difficult to have a market where you're just creating product and you're not clear about what the exit is, how you're offloading your goods. In the venture capital world, this is either exits or IPOs. Like, if all you're doing is equity, because these people aren't giving you cash, so you're getting equity in exchange for putting in a bunch of time and resources. You need to be clear that there's a path, that you have a path to where you're gonna sell this thing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an acquisition, though it's either an acquisition or that you have a path to investors who are large enough to be able to take the company to the IPO stage. Like going the big win route is going to take a lot of help. So as an incubator, your customer will be the VCs whose business is to take it the rest of the way. So as an incubator, the term I hear a lot here is this pre-incubation, and that's what at least it's the area that I'm interested in. It's most VCs in India aren't interested in first-time entrepreneurs. It's just sort of the way it's netted out is that there's a lot of raw young talent that's interested, and the VCs are skeptical on working with them. And so there's I think that there's a big opportunity to work with young people and then give them this initial, it's called sort of seed funding, to get them to the point where they're credible, they have prototypes, they have some traction, so that they can talk to VCs. So there's these three parts to the system. You have to be good at recruiting. It's kind of your bread and butter. If you don't have good ingredients, good materials, good people, your output's not going to be great. The things to look for, I think, are number one is commitment. Everybody has said, the ideas are going to change substantially over time. If it's something that my friends used to always say, just look for a light behind the eyes. You need to be really clear that they're going to do it. There's going to be all kinds of heartache. They need to be committed enough to go through it. They need to be bright. And then the other thing that I think is important is sort of this, is to pick a space. In your case, it's I don't even totally understand all of the details of MPLS, but you're a professor of electrical engineering at IIT Bombay and you're in core network services. It's I don't know what you're doing, but if you're doing anything interesting in an area that's totally fundamental to how networks operate, then okay, we'll figure out what the idea is, exactly. I at least appreciate that you're smart and that we're in an interesting space and that there's going to be interesting ideas here. And so we can take the time to let those things fall out, and I think that that's some of what you get from the incubator. The mentorship section, I think, is really important. That's really, I think, what you do, what your actions are. Some things that I've seen in some incubators, register the companies. Yeah, if people are committed, then take the effort to actually get them set up. Until companies actually exist, they can't have agreements with anybody, and so just legally you're just in this kind of limbo unless you actually help them get set up. There's also giving them help with accounting. The thing you want to focus on is your entrepreneurs. They're a bunch of young guys. they have an idea, they want to work on it. Like you as an incubator, what you're really providing is sort of like the adult supervision and kind of trying to take care of all of the administrative and like miscellaneous crap that gets in people's way as they're trying to work on their business. And so that's a large part of your role. There's another thing that comes in handy is one problem that young entrepreneurs face sometimes when they start up is that they suddenly go from this environment where they've been working in a company where people have been expecting things from them regularly, or they've been in school where they have assignments, and then all of a sudden they're on their own, and there's nobody really looking over their shoulder to see whether or not they do anything. Yeah, they should be working, but we should all be working. It's really useful to have like weekly meetings where people have to present what they've done over the last week, and they have to talk about what they're going to do the next week. Even if you don't understand a word they say, the fact that they have to make this meeting, that they have to sort of go and do it's going to orient them around, like making sure that they do something. There's some accountability. Like even if you don't understand the details, like part of your role in an incubator, I think, is providing some of this accountability that would typically come from senior management or your management. Like now you're doing a startup, you don't have management. Your investors become your managers. And then a large part, I think, is this networking. And I almost caution people to really introspect and think about like how good your network is. Like, because you need, a lot of the teams coming to you are going to be incomplete, which means that, it'll be a couple of geeky guys, and, they need someone who can take care of business or marketing, or, there'll be some missing parts of it. And part of what should happen is that you should be able to connect with those people and help to form complete teams. And then like I was saying before, you need to be able to connect these people with the investors or the companies, the partners, the clients who can take them to the next level. Like at least with the kind of incubator I'm interested in, like I'm not interested in trying to hold somebody's hand for years and years and years while they establish the business. Like I want to work with people up to the point where they can demonstrate the idea, demonstrate that that they are capable of doing something interesting, and present this to people whose job it is to take them to the next level or to work with these people in some sort of professional way. But that all comes down to like whether or not you can actually orchestrate these connections. The other disadvantage of working with first-time entrepreneurs is that almost by definition their networks are weak. Like they're either just out of college or they have a couple of years, but they don't yet have the experience to be able to have the conversations that they need in order to close deals. And so it's one of the places where, it's why real VCs fund like experienced entrepreneurs. It's largely for the network. If you have this network, if you can take advantage of this network, whether it's your alumni or your personal friends or something, then that'll help a lot with being able to provide this critical element that's necessary for starting up. But it's like, for a startup, you don't necessarily need to have that guy on full time if you can get it from your investors, if you can get it from an incubator. Maybe my last point here, so that's on the sell. Like, you need to be able to exit these things. Like, in my opinion, you shouldn't hold on indefinitely. So 3 quick things. For me, success is either an IPO, which means that at the incubation level that we were able to get investors. It's an acquisition. A lot of times now people are doing these early stage acquisitions. And so if you can sell a company to somebody else, they get a team of proven engineers who can demonstrate that they've been working on some interesting technology at a low cost. It's like everybody wins. And then the third thing, which I respect, though it's not at all respected in the Valley, is just being profitable. In my opinion, it's a valid business model to get into service. But it's important to know whether service is an outcome, like it being an ongoing service type business is a potential outcome. If what you're doing is taking equity as compensation, then you're never going to get your money back. And the fact that you created a business is not going to help you at all. And so be careful in how you structure your deals with your companies, using some combination of equity and debt that properly reflects the type of business that everybody thinks is being created. If people are creating a service business that's just going to be generating income but isn't going to really have a significant amount of equity value, then structure things as some sort of loan that needs to get paid back. If it's a shoot for the moon IPO type thing, then equity is a good idea, or you can mix these things. One other thing I'd like to just point to quickly is there's another kind of incubator in the US that I think is really, really interesting, and it's what I'm interested in. It's called the Y Combinator. So it's worth looking at. Even if you don't do that model exactly, it addresses some of the issues I see with a lot of business incubators. They really focus on just getting a flow of companies through and moving quickly. That's it. Thanks.